Okay, last but hopefully not least, we're just going to jump right into it and start off by saying if any one of us ever went into a K through 12 classroom and tried to teach like a lesson on history, math, science, we would probably get fired. A lot of people don't realize how much pre-planning teachers are required, not suggested to do, but required to do to meet state standards. And then those lesson plans have to be approved by either the principal or other authority at the school that they're teaching at. And so when we think about, oh, we're going to go into a school and teach them about concrete, well, we teach our college courses kind of on our own. Like, yeah, we have to follow ABET, but ABET only has 7 things, and they're very broad, and we can meet them in different ways that we feel is appropriate. K through 12 doesn't have that luxury. The teachers are oftentimes stuck with the state standards they have. And I will say I know this because my wife taught middle school for 10 years. So she, A, has the patience to deal with me, because sometimes I act like a middle schooler, but B, she can help me when I'm trying to go into a classroom, be like, okay, how can I make it easier for the teacher? Because you want to get invited back. You don't want to show up, do your demo, and the teacher's just like staring at you like, okay, we're never having them come back. And what you have to do is kind of meet what they are required to do. And I put the last thing on there about peer evaluations. So you may not know this, but K through 12, oftentimes those teachers go into their colleagues' classrooms, sit there for a lesson, and write what they need to improve upon. We often don't do that at the college level. My department is looking for a department head, and we have interviews on campus. And Friday, we had a potential candidate come and talk about how he wants to improve undergraduate stuff. And so I raised my hand. I said, how do you feel about implementing like peer review at the college level so we can go into each other's rooms? You should have seen the look of panic on his face because he knew that would not be a popular idea at the college level. But K through 12, they're doing that. So there's a very different environment that we're going into because they are actually, and I know we say we're teaching, but they're actually teaching. They're not just showing. And so oftentimes when we're talking about in a proposal like, yeah, we'll go in the classroom, we'll show this and that, we aren't really using the correct language because we're talking about showing them something when we should in fact actually be teaching it and teaching it to the age and grade appropriate level. And I've seen a lot of classroom activities, and I will admit mine also were this way too. It's like, we're just going to show up and we're going to wing it and say, hey, concrete, great, they're going to do something. That's not really the best approach. And I've been fortunate for the last couple of years to become part of this SciREN network that the University of Alabama is kind of setting up. It did not originally develop there. It started in North Carolina at UNC, not UNC Charlotte. But what it is a framework to help have faculty have face-to-face interactions with teachers and collaboratively develop an activity. Not you going to a teacher say, I got this, let me in your classroom and let me, show. And that has been an eye-opening experience because now I have adjusted what I've been doing for like almost a decade, and it actually gets the students more involved because now you're talking to them like their teacher is talking to them. You're not talking to them like, oh, I'm the outside person. Now you're using the same words, the same kind of language, and it's helping them actually learn what you're trying to teach them. So we're going to come back to the SciREN framework, but we need to kind of cover just a little bit about what are teachers required to do. So everyone makes fun of Alabama, in terms of education rankings and everything, but thank God for Mississippi. So in Alabama, We call our state education standards, we call them the course of study, so COS. And I just picked grade 6. If we're going to say science, how many standards do you think that every single 6th grade science teacher in the state of Alabama has to follow in the 180-day school year? Just like I'm actually looking for you guys. 20, okay, that's a little high, but actually that's pretty close. There's about 16, if you count maybe a subset. Number 13 has a subset. But 16 science standards for only grade 6. And those are completely different than grade 7, 8, and so forth. So your activity that you're thinking about proposing may only meet none, 1, maybe 2 of only a single grade. And you're saying, oh yeah, I'll go into the middle school and do this. Well, Alabama says grade 6 only focuses on physical science. Grade 7 is bio, and grade 8 is more physics. So you would have to adjust what you're doing. And, you know, we're doing science, like that's where we kind of fall into, but teachers in general have these different categories in a state curriculum that they're trying to meet. Because the curriculum's addressing everything. We have it so easy because we can say, I'm only teaching concrete materials every semester. That's really easy to do. But when we talk about K through 12 and education, you know, primary education, we have a lot more to consider as we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And so if we stick with middle school, because that's my wife's expertise, and I constantly pester her about like, hey, is this a good idea? And oftentimes it's like, no. But that leads to improvements. And so we look at the science and engineering practices for Alabama, and we get some sense of what they're trying to do. Because this is what teachers are trying to address in the classroom. Asking questions and defining problems. Well, guess what? Our previous speakers talked a lot about that at the undergraduate and graduate level. They're K through 12 is actually using that language. So great, we can use that language specifying relationships between variables, clarifying arguments, and models. That's the language the teachers are using in the classroom. Great. So now I have a sense of how I can structure an activity in grades 6 through 8 and actually have it count as a lesson. So that's one of the big things. A lot of y'all, and my lesson or activity that I used to do, didn't actually count as an instructional period for the teacher. They would actually have to make it up later because I didn't actually follow for that grade level what was needed. And Alabama, along with all the other states, have this idea of cross-cutting concepts because we can't just silo the information. And so we have for grades 6 through 8 kind of these cause and effect relationships, patterns, and that kind of stuff. These are things that the students are hearing, how the teachers are presenting it to them. And so if you can kind of just shift your activity to more follow the language here, it's going to go infinitely better than what you may currently be doing. And so I just picked one of the grade 6 science standards. I won't read to you, but climate change. State of Alabama, standard 14 for science in grade 6 requires instruction on climate change. Well, great. That's pretty broad. It's kind of hard to figure out, okay, what can I do? Guess what? The standard continues, and you don't have to read all this, and lists every single thing explicitly that the students must know by the end of grade 6 for standard 14. And remember, there were 16 science standards. So this helps. I can look through it and say, oh, I can make my activity fall into this category. But it's not only things that they must know. students are required to also come away with skills. And for Standard 14, 3 skills are required. And oh my goodness, this looks like stuff for undergrads. Analyze the data to identify possible causal relationships. I don't think our undergrads, sometimes can handle this. But this is what's required in grade 6 science, Alabama. And states are very different, but also a lot of this comes from the National Research Council, which develops and guides kind of national educational standards. So it's actually not that different state to state. But this is great, because now I have a checklist of, okay, what can I include in my activities to, again, make sure that the teacher can count your visit or visits as actual instructional days. So what does a lesson plan look like? Again, every teacher, school district may have slightly different templates, but we can go through kind of the general process of thinking of what is a teacher doing for every single class that they ever teach. My wife taught 8 different sessions a day. She had to come up with 8 lesson plans a day. As faculty, we come up with 0 lesson plans. We may think, oh yeah, okay, I got a syllabus, it tells me I'm going to teach about ACI 211 on Tuesday. But most of us don't sit down and say, the students will learn this, the outcomes. We just kind of go and do it and expect students to learn it. But these guys got to come up with an explicit lesson plan for every single thing they do. And so again, here's an example, consequence of burning fossil fuels. It meets that standard 14 for grade 6. You have to have an overview. We have to have objectives of, okay, why are we doing, what's the students going to be able to do after I'm done teaching them? How are we going to do it? You may not know this. The teachers actually have to explain how. They can't just say, I will teach ACI 211. You have to document how you're going to do it. And I took this from Alabama's website. There's actually 3 more pages down. I didn't feel like, shrinking and copying, but it literally lists step by step what the teacher will do for this lesson. And we often consider assessments as, I'll give them an exam or homework. True, but I would say K through 12 is moving pretty far away from we're just going to do exams. There's a lot more, I would almost call them alternative assessment strategies. And so for this lesson, one of the assessment strategies is teacher observation. It's a valid way to kind of gauge a general understanding based on, okay, is the student asking questions and that kind of stuff. But also there's a more explicit assessment with writing a short paragraph and a cause and effect paragraph. Has a pretty specific template because, again, we're not undergrads, we're not graduates. We're dealing with adolescents that do need some framework to kind of demonstrate their ability. And while this may seem simple to us, it's things oftentimes when we go into a classroom we're not even caring about. We just show, I'm just going to show them something. And the teacher will handle how to assess it. Well, now when you come in with this, you're actually providing a lot more value to the teacher to the point where hopefully they'll ask you to keep coming back. And so going now back to SciREN and that network, and it's not saying that this is the only way to do it, it's just the way I found to be extremely helpful, is we now have a mechanism that I can go and meet a teacher face-to-face. SciREN organizes events, provides PDHs for the teachers to attend. I said my wife had to do 8 lesson plans a day. Do you think she wanted to do anything at 3:15 when school was over? No, because she got up at 6 to make sure everything got done. To get teachers, to provide the value, Well, they were required to have PDHs. Some districts require 30 days equivalent PDHs per year. Now, they count PDHs different than professional engineers, so it's a little bit different, but it's actually a fair amount. So offer that as incentive to ensure that, okay, we get participation with teachers meeting faculty. And it's not just, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. No, the faculty bring their demo, their activity to the teachers and get immediate feedback. And I put this in big, bold letters. Listen to the teachers. I've been doing this for a while now. We've had one faculty who's like, okay, I got this aluminum alloy, and they're trying to explain some kinetics with it. And the teacher stopped him like mid-sentence, like, no. I will not even have you in my room if you're going to explain it like that. I teach this. You need to put it in context this way. Well, great. It doesn't change what the faculty is trying to do, but now the teacher gets a benefit and the students actually can understand what the faculty is trying to do. So that interaction is really critical. And just as an example to kind of show how this process works with an activity that I do. So for 15 years or more, been doing these concrete coasters. Did them in Illinois when I was a grad student. We use a calcium sulfur-aluminate cement, Cementol from Home Depot. Students make coaster out of it. It sets in 15 minutes. They get to take it home. Oh, yay, it's concrete. And we talk about hydration and all this sort of stuff. So I used to just go in classrooms and say, let's make coasters. And we talk about what concrete is in general, but I never had a targeted focus for the room I would go into. And so now I picked some different standards. So grade 8 in Alabama, I can actually meet standard 5 and 6 for science. I just tweak what I explain to them, and now all of a sudden I'm providing some substantial value to that teacher to understand what I'm talking about and then be able to put it in her lesson plan and say, that was an instructional period. What does that look like? Well, from standard 5, students must know this. They should be able to do that and understand those 2 bullet points. Great. I can tweak what I explain for my calcium sulfur-aluminate reaction and everything, how I'm going to add water and have chemical reactions that change the characteristic property of the substance. Great. Now that teacher checks that box off in their lesson plan. Cool. So this looks like in person. We have the luxury of having the Alabama Natural History Museum on campus. And so what we do, we have the teachers come for an evening. We have about $1,000 in door prizes from local businesses to encourage them to come. Because again, they're working way more than 40 hours a week. Last thing they want to do on a school night is go out late. But we provide dinner, door prizes in a nice setting, and each faculty member sets up a table. I'm here showing these 3 teachers sitting there my concrete coaster demo. I'm explaining it to them as if I was going to be teaching their students. They're constantly telling me, no, don't do that, which is great because now I have immediate feedback. And they get the feedback, or they can see that I'm actually incorporating their feedback and not just an email saying, okay, don't do that, and then I forget. When it's in person, it's a lot more meaningful, and you can get a lot more benefit out of it. So that's kind of a very broad thing. This will take you to the SciREN page for UA to kind of show the structure of what we do. But you don't have to do it this way. It's just important that you're aware that every single state has standards or courses of study. And if you really want to provide value to K through 12, and as you're writing proposals, to show that you actually understand and not just you're Bill Nye the science guy showing up in the classroom, you want to understand how to incorporate the standards into your activity. So that's it.